Thanks for tuning in, everyone. We are excited for this year's EMTB Shootout. In our last video, we introduced you to the contenders, all of the bikes that we brought with us to Knoxville, Tennessee for this year's shootout. In this video, we wanted to introduce you to a little bit of behind the scenes reveal, if you will, to the testers, the terrain, and how we go about testing and reviewing all these bikes.
Oh, Drew, do not move.
Why?
Pretty late.
That's how people get up who can't pedal up that thing.
I don't like mules. They need to be broken. Truth is, it's my first day on EMTBs in general.
What we're going to show you is basically some of our mindsets, each of our riders' preferences, where they like to ride, the type of terrain they ride, and a little bit of how we just conduct these reviews. We have a trail category, we have an enduro category, and essentially what that means for the sake of this test is bikes with 155 millimeters or less of rear wheel travel are in our trail category, and bikes with 156, we'll call it 160 millimeters and more of rear wheel travel are in our enduro category. And there is a little bit of crossover between the terrain that we ride on both of these bikes, because we do want to see how an enduro e-bike will pedal and perform on all-day trails, as well as mellower, kind of cross-country rides. And we also like to push the limits of the trail bikes and see how they perform in rough, chunky, gnarly downhill, because we realize some people may just want to be able to buy one bike and might have to ride it a little bit outside its comfort zone one way or the other. So let's get right into it. We'll show you guys some of the terrain that we test and review these bikes, and then introduce you to our reviewers. All right, so obviously some of our favorite testing is rocky trails. We'd love to come out and let guys see how bikes, suspension, geometry feels when things get steep, when they get rocky and rough. This segment here is a quick one. We can repeat it. We've got about a 1.5 minute climb and a solid downhill little rocky section. Makes for a good time. Lots of quick bike swaps. Lets us really see how these bikes handle the chunk. So while we love chunky terrain, we know that there's a lot of people that spend time riding smooth trails just like this here. So it's important that we make sure bikes can perform equally well on smooth terrain where a lot of riders are going to be out having fun. It's not great to find a bike that's the most capable in the rough and chunky stuff. It feels like a tranquilized racehorse when you get out on the mellow trails that you might be spending most of your time on. Let's move on to the next bit of trail.
Brian, get out of the way!
So obviously getting back up to the top of your favorite downhills is one of the things e-bikes do best. Not everyone has the luxury of climbing smooth fire road or being in a trail center where you've got big, wide open, groomed trails to climb. Sometimes you gotta get up chunky, rocky, drainage ruts, you name it. So having a bike that's the lowest and the slackest isn't always gonna be the best. And for that reason, we spend a lot of time looking for technical, rough, bumpy, and uneven hill climbs so we can see how the bike's geometry will handle, how the suspension will feel in terms of comfort going up the hill as well as down. Obviously, we can't come to an e-bike shootout without hitting what are many riders' favorite types of trails, and that is jump trails. Big berms, big compressions, airtime, you name it. These are the type of trails that a lot of riders live for, including many of the riders on our staff. So we got to spend some time out here putting in those air miles to see how these bikes handle the big compressions in the big berms, landing big jumps, and how fun and playful they are in the air. So that is most of the types of terrain we come out and keep an eye on while we're testing all these bikes for you guys in our e-bike shootouts. Obviously, there's a lot more that goes on behind the scenes and lots of different trails that we try to get into, but hopefully that gives you a little bit of insight as to how our test sessions go. Let's meet the riders. Oh, U-turn. He sure is a good sport, but don't let that guy near anything if he's got a tool in his hand. He'll be sure to break it, and you'll be making a U-turn yourself and heading back home early. Then there's Sour Patch. You may think his shining disposition earned the nickname, but in fact it's his diet of Rockstar and neon-colored candies. Then there's Frenchie, the class clown. If he's around, you better watch out for rubber snakes or fireworks going off, because he's always up to something mischievous. Then there's Cole Gregg, the stylish jumper who also enjoys taking his shirt off whenever he can and asks you to get a picture for his Tinder profile. When he's not talking about his diet or low body fat percentage, you can find him tinkering on his cockpit. Then there's Robert, the Scottish Sasquatch. Up until this trip, he'd only spent about 15 minutes on an e-bike. We think we converted him. He was instantly comfortable throwing the biggest whips and definitely eating the biggest sandwiches out of the crew. We think we pushed him a little bit and he might have a newfound appreciation for technical hill climbs. Then there's this old grumpy guy. Not sure what to say other than he likes raw, natural trails, and is still trying to work on his jumping style. Then we've got our camera crew. Dustin's always got a smile on his face and ready to find those artsy angles when he's not looking for a cup of coffee. Then we've got Brian. He single-handedly tests the walk mode on every bike for us, and we appreciate all the extra effort he does. So now that you've met our testers, seen the different types of trails and terrain that we like to session and find while we're out here on these test bike shootouts, we wanted to address one last thing. Obviously, bikes come spec'd with different components, riders have different personal preferences, but one of the things that we try to isolate is tread patterns, tire compounds, and give each bike the most predictable possible feel we can across the board. For that reason, we have teamed up with Schwalbe Tires once again to be the official e-bike shootout sponsor. All of our test bikes are outfitted with the same Schwalbe tires in each category, so that way all bikes can have a very similar feel and performance out on the trail.
She looks good, she looks fine.
So by installing those same tires on all bikes, we can eliminate tread patterns, tire designs, rubber compounds as to what may make certain bikes feel better or worse than another. And it's really an important part in how we set all these bikes up for the shootout. So thank you all very much for watching. We are excited to get back up in the hills here in Knoxville, Tennessee and complete our 2022 EMTB Shootout. So make sure you subscribe to the channel. There's gonna be lots of individual bike reviews coming out until we release that grand finale episode very soon. So thank you guys once again, and we'll see you out on the trails.